In this episode of 8 Unedited Minutes, we're discussing ways to flex your gratitude muscle. My guest is renowned gratitude expert David George Brooke. Topics include how to keep a successful gratitude journal, how to avoid or pull out of downward spirals, how to retrain your brain to consistently focus on the good stuff in your life so the bad stuff isn't a factor, and more golden nuggets of advice. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to 8 Unedited Minutes. Today I'm discussing how to flex your gratitude muscle, and my guest is David George Brooke. David, known as that gratitude guy, is an accomplished speaker, coach, and best-selling author with a career spanning over 25 years. With over 30 years of experience managing in the corporate world, including as a former Nordstrom store manager, Brooke has established himself as an expert in the field of gratitude, and I'm grateful you're here. Thank you for making the time, David. I appreciate it.
Mark, thank you. The word of the day is gratitude and gratefulness. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'd love to jump right in. I mean, the gratitude guy, you built a career on it. Why is gratitude so important to you? What's the
Well,
story there?
thank you, Mark. It's very important to me because there's things that happened to me in my life. I wasn't really sure how I was going to handle a lot of the setbacks, a lot of the tragedies, the
Yeah.
traumas, whatever. But it started for me back years ago when I was 19, many years ago when I was in high school, and I went and did a talk for a teacher of mine. And I went back to my car and I thought, that's what I want to be as a speaker someday. I didn't know anything about gratitude, but I knew I wanted to be a speaker. So it was like 45 years later, I finally got the guts to go out and do this speaking thing. And I remember thinking, I'm going to need a coping mechanism because let's face it, our world in the United States or around the world or whatever, all these drugs and all these things that happen, all these things are just coping mechanisms that people are trying to use to cope with life. Life's this giant roller coaster. I mean, it's up, it's down, it's twists, it's turn, it's corkscrews, it's whatever it
So
is.
I got
Oh,
a
go ahead.
question for you on the roller
Yeah.
coaster side. Really briefly, before we get into flexing the gratitude muscle,
Yeah.
how did you deal with the roller coaster?
Well, it's the down parts that you got to deal with. The up parts, when you're flying high and everybody loves you. As I always say, everybody returns your call. They send your emails back. They don't ghost you, all those things. But it's when you're down in the pits, down in the bottom. And that's where gratitude has really come in. And one of the things that I mention in almost every talk and presentation I do is the power of a gratitude journal. And there's something so powerful. And you talk about flexing your gratitude muscle, so much of it has to do with writing in a gratitude journal. I write in it every morning. You can write it in the evening or in the morning or whatever you want. But what's so cool about it is there's something about the power of a pen and a paper and writing it down. In this day and age of keyboards and all this other kind of stuff, you can, talk into your phone, it'll type things out
Yeah.
and things like this. There's nothing like, I am grateful for Mark J. Carter for inviting me to the 8 Minute Riff podcast today and so forth. It plants it in your brain. In fact, in my gratitude journal, there's a little saying in the beginning that says, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But if you write about it, it empowers you. And there's even a place in mine that has the highlight of your day, which is what the best thing that happened yesterday. You can bet the highlight of my day tomorrow will be talking to Mark J. Carter today. And so you'll have a prominent place there. But it really, the word I use the most is coping mechanism. It became a great coping mechanism because there's so many destructive and deadly coping mechanisms out there. You got all these pills and opioids and fentanyl and all these crazy things. And a lot of people are just trying to get out of pain. So if you can take the gratitude piece and focus on everything you're grateful for and see that it's the oldest line in the book, but see the glass half full, it can
Yeah.
make such a big difference in your attitude.
What's the other side of the coin? Because I faced it recently where I had an amazing day. I'm flying high, things are going good. And it
Mhm.
wasn't bad the next day. It wasn't
Right.
great, but it wasn't
Yeah.
bad. What tips would you have for flexing the gratitude muscle to keep it at least if your high is up here and down here? How do you keep that flow going so you don't crash?
Well, that's a great question. I think part of it in the one on mine has got a template, which it has the current event and special occasion. So you don't need a diary, and then 4 or 5 lines about what you're grateful for, and then the highlight of your day. So if you have a great day like that, in the highlight of your day, you can write down all the things that happened yesterday that are really, really important. And so you can look back, and I look back on certain days and think, what did I write on this day when I was doing really well? So to avoid a letdown, if you will, like the next day where you come off this huge high, to avoid a letdown, the thing that I always do is I always go back to the basics. So I think about, so let's never forget what are we most probably grateful for? Geez, I can't even talk. More than anything else is our life. Our
Yeah.
life, our health, our family, our friends, the roof over our head, a warm bed, a hot shower, food in the refrigerator. I mean, all these basics which we take for granted. So if you kind of stay rooted in those things every single day, I always write one of the first things I talk about my health. And it's just, I don't care if it's the same every day because I'm very fortunate at my age, the decisions I've made, but also the good fortune I've had to be very healthy, knock on wood. And
Yeah.
so you stay with the basics. So then you don't have a letdown. So you don't have that thing where you kind of like the high and then the low and so forth. And so whatever those are for, no, you and I'll have a lot of similar things, but you'll have things that are unique to you. And you think one of the things we've talked about is like your girlfriend and how grateful you are to have such a great lady in
Yeah.
your life and so on, and so being rooted in those basic sort of fundamental gratitude aspects every day will keep kind of from any letdown happening.
So if I hear you right, it sounds like the little things should not be overlooked. It doesn't have to be this big epic win every day.
Exactly.
I mean, would that be correct?
Oh, absolutely. And I think too, it's funny that it sort of seems counterintuitive, but sometimes I think about why do I watch the news? And so I'll just kind of typically I'll watch the 6 o'clock news because I want to be informed. I want to see what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
But 90% of it is negative. But what it does is it reinforces the little things in your life. You look at, not to get too political, but you look at some of the stuff in the Israeli conflict, in Ukraine, Russia, all these different things. You see these innocent people holding babies with blood on them or whatever it might be. And you just think, how fortunate are we? Our problems are so minor compared to some of the other things in the world. And it's just interesting. I mean, like there's all these statistics. I put them in different blog posts and things about, something like still half the world or 60 or 70% still doesn't have clean water. And we take it for granted on the tap every day. Now, you're not going to necessarily write, I'm grateful for the water in the tap, but that's what it comes down to is all these basics. And what it does is it retrains your brain to focus on all the good stuff. And then the bad stuff just isn't really a factor. And it's the same thing about being around. One of the things I love your positivity. Why do I like talking to Mark J. Carter? Because you're a positive guy. You're talking about good stuff and it's always neat. So to me, it just reinforces that. And then the negative stuff just kind of, goes away and you just sort of develop. I always tell it, you develop a good armor or a good Teflon to have the negative gamma rays of life bounce off you and they aren't able to penetrate you and get you to be negative like some people you and I know in our life, which are just people they just I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be happy. And so we can choose that. One of the things it says right on the top of my website, it says, you and only you choose your attitude. And then it says, you can choose an attitude of gratitude. It'll make you happier, healthier, and lighter. And so it's a choice, and we get to make it every day.
I think that's really important is to realize it's a choice, and it sounds like the choice can become a habit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, and habits are just, life is broken down to to-do lists and different things and I'll give you a good example, and a habit is so important, especially good, healthy habits. And a good example for me is that I do something every day and people, I don't think it's that big deal, but it's called the power hour. Before I turn on the devices, before I turn on my laptop so I can see Mark or look at the phone, I get out of bed, make my bed, drink a quart of water, go in, turn on the coffee machine, go in, take my shower, get ready, come back, get dressed, come in here and stretch for 15 minutes. I'm an older guy. You got to make sure you're stretching and all that kind of thing. Go back to my little chair in there, meditate for 10 minutes, come back into the office, write in the gratitude journal for 5 or 6 minutes, put the journal away. Now it's time to turn on the devices.
So
And so it's already set up the day.
So we covered a lot of ground in a short period of time, like maybe a sentence. If you were to someone saying, I want to flex my gratitude muscle, and you said, just do one thing, what would you say? Just one thing to get started. What would you tell them to do?
Well, I'm a huge proponent of the gratitude journal. And one of the
Okay.
things I say, one of my sayings is gratitude turns what you haven't to enough. It's one of my favorite things I say a lot. But if I was to say, people will ask me, what's one thing they can remember? And that is get a gratitude journal. You can get mine, you can get a spiral notebook, whatever. But even if you can't write 5 or 6 minutes, which is all it takes, but because I've timed it a million times, just write one word. Start with one word for 7 days in a row. Start with one sentence. Start with 2 sentences, and then look how you feel after 7 days. And I think that one word will go to one sentence, will go to 2 sentences, will go to 4 or 5 minutes, because it's just every day. And I have a little thing called the daily number, and that's kind of taking your temperature. And so the first number I put down when I wake up and I come on here after I've done everything and I'm ready to, the final thing before I turn on the devices is the gratitude journal. I'm usually a 9. But then after I write in the gratitude journal, it has you write another number, and that's typically a 9.5.
That
Because
is excellent.
that's how it impacts you so critically. And somebody said, well, wait a minute, you're Mr. Positive. How come you're not a 10? I'm a 10 when I walk off the stage and I get a standing ovation. That's when I'm a 10. When it doesn't get any better than that.
Thank you so much for the time, David. I appreciate you sharing these 8 minutes with us. It's been great. And just real quick, what domain is the best one to find you at?
Thatgratitudeguide.com. www.thatgratitudeguide.com is the best place to find me.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
You bet. Nice to talk to you, Mark.
And scene.